within your area and indeed Essex. Andy Prophet, to my right, is responsible for our Evolve programme. The Evolve programme is our way of being able to provide still an excellent service to the people of Essex at a time of great change and austerity. So Andy will go into that in a bit more detail. Just for me, just setting the scene firstly, for me it's like coming home, and I hope I'm not being cheesy because I know a lot of you in the audience because I was a divisional commander here for over 2 years. Andy also was a local policing unit commander here. I know the challenges of the work that's already happened here. But the bottom line is, 80% of our resources are in people. We've got to make significant savings again, so therefore there's going to be a reduction in the number of officers and staff that we have. I'll be open with you, because otherwise the equation doesn't add up. Rest assured though, we will squeeze the other 20%, squeeze the pips of that, because we want to, sort of reduce the impact on frontline policing, and that's the philosophy and the emphasis that we're trying to place is on actually enhancing local policing. Now that's just words. You'll want more than that, and you deserve more than that. So what we're trying to do, and we will do, is to devolve more of our resources down to the local district commanders. Those individuals in the future will have, decision not taken 100%, but likely to have responsive patrol officers under his or her wing. So they will be able to have the flexibility to deploy those resources. It's important to say also that you've done some excellent work with the police here within Thurrock around community safety partnership working. We have got co-location with licensee department. We have got co-location around multi-agency safeguarding posts. You're leading the way actually within Essex in terms of that. I'm really sort of impressed with the work that you're actually doing there with Mr. Bolton and others in terms of taking that agenda forward. And that's really important because it's about making the area safer, and particularly individuals who've been subjected to some horrible violence. So well done in terms of that. But the essence of what we are trying to achieve will be very much district commander, his or her resources to be able to deploy in a flexible way, working with the community safety team here, and if I had my way, I'm sure you'll have your views and opinion, that we'll be looking to move them in the same location. Don't worry, that's not a takeover bid by me. I'm not bothered if they work in this location. We're not that far away, but I do think we should be in the same location, sharing information and intelligence to inform joint service delivery. I also, and I see Simon Watson there, but I also want to say that we're looking to increase the number of specials. We've relied on the specials for a number of years, and the hours within the special constabulary are increasing. The numbers are going down at the moment, but the Chief Constables recently announced that we're going to be aspiring to get 650 special constables, and we've had recruitment campaigns within Thurrock, and I'm committed to making sure that we actually do that. Finally, before I hand over to Andy, he will go into the Evolve programme, and that's what you want to hear. And please, this is not me showing off because who am I, but within this area, crime down by 3.9% this year, burglary in people's homes. Sorry for any of you that have been a victim of burglary, by the way, from dragging up old coals, but it's a horrible, nasty offence. In this area, burglary dwellings down by 12.4% this year, theft and vehicle crime down by 15%, robbery down by 25%, and antisocial behaviour has decreased by 5.1%. For those of you that may be a little bit disbelieving in nature, and I'll put myself in that category, these words I need to say. Essex Police has a very strong compliance with National Crime Recording Standards. That's not me saying that, it's a recent HMIC inspection. So we're committed to recording crime accurately. So I'm convinced the reductions that you've all achieved in this area are genuine crime reduction, against the backdrop of austerity and falling numbers of officers, so we're not doing that bad. And I think as we go forward, we do have to, have that mentality of cup, half full, rather than cup half empty. The thin blue line is getting thinner, but I'm sure with the team that we've got, we can still deliver for the people of Thurrock. And not only deliver for them, but deliver really well. Andy, can I have
7 there, I promise you I won't. I aim to do 7-10 minutes because I think the value is in the questions tonight. The Evolve programme, I lead it on behalf of the Chief. I want to talk to you a bit about the reality and a bit about the ambition of what we're trying to achieve. First slide there, well that's a combination of reductions in funding and growth pressures on the budget of Essex Police, inflation, pay increments and the rest of it. So the combined challenge we see here is CSR to £36 million. Quite significant, but Evolve must be more than about cuts. There must be ambition because we have to be honest, don't we? We can improve the way we do business in So there is a desire from the force to look at the way that public can access service, look at the way we can provide things through use of IT, look at our use of buildings, to do things in the most cost-effective way, because this money has got to be found. Whilst remembering the core purpose of policing and emergency service, we're here to protect people, so we're trying to constantly balance those two things. Local policing, local delivery, I think is what the public expect from us, and that's very much at the heart of what we're trying to achieve. And we have really stark data comparing forces up and down the country now in terms of comparisons of what individual forces spend on individual bits of the business. So we had some really useful insights, which kicked off the Evolve programme in September, about where Essex was benchmarked against some others. Turning to the second slide, the Chief and the PCC set some principles for the programme to start with. And I won't read those to you, but in essence, deliver against the police and crime plan, deliver against the plan that the public said were important through the commission to deliver. Be capable on the national scale. The force has got quite clearly some obligations to provide firearms cover within the wider policing, public order policing and specialisms, and we still need to be able to do that. But to be able to deal with threat, harm and risk, the things that harm your communities. Remember that your emergency service, when people ring, they need to come. Make sure there's a local feel. Make sure PCSOs have a strong foothold in the policing provision you provide. Volunteering, partnership, collaboration. And these are all the ambitions and the very, very clear direction I was given at the start of the programme. So that's what we're trying to achieve.
There's actually two items I'd like to ask you about. Firstly is, you know all the fencing that's going up along the Manorway. Have you noticed any increase in crime to the local residents behind the fencing? And then the next question, which I assume you was half expecting anyway, is a few months ago I read in the newspaper, which I was a little bit annoyed at because of who had actually gained this, but that the police station was going to reopen to the public. Now, I understand now that this is not the case, but I have seen nothing in the media contrary to this, and perhaps you can put the residents out of their misery as to what's happening there. One of the issues is a lot of these Stafford residents, when you look at the age profile, it's slightly older than some of the other areas, so their usage of the internet and the computer and other sources of interacting with the police are not necessarily there. They like to be able to go down to the police station, walk into there and make their complaint actually face to face with the police officer. So I would like you to say, yes, the police station is open and that will be able to have that contest.
You talk about reductions in budgets, and year by year we get an increase in the, or crime is going down, so it seems about you ought to reduce your budget even more, really. But to come to a serious point, it worries me when you talk very airily about budgets and budget cuts, because my experience looking at my council tax is that year on year the police precept goes up. Now, are you telling me the actual money that you spend is going down year by year? I don't think it is.
In terms of your comments, and I think actually it's probably been reasonable. You know, I'm not one who's, frankly into that type, like praise, but it's genuine, isn't it? You have achieved a lot. Again, it's really important to say that. The visibility one is really important though, because the bottom line is we're going to have fewer police officers, fewer police staff and fewer PCSOs. I'm not going to wrap that up. I'd rather be plain speaking to you and show you this respect that you deserve. But equally, because that sounds like cup half empty, there's lots of things that we can do to be able to ensure that we're still providing an excellent service and are more visible. I'll give you one, for example. A safer crewing policy that we can actually adopt where our officers are not routinely double crewed. And I want to make sure that that is actually implemented across the piece. Where we're actually having the PCSOs that are out there, single crewed, interacting with members of the public. Secondly, I have made a pledge around increasing the number of special constables. Very, very important, particularly in the rural communities. We've got 2 initiatives in the north of the county where the specials are actually, or have formulated a rural specials team, and they're owning that particular area. And thirdly, in terms of visibility, we do need to get out of those somebody said to me the other day, they're not hard to reach communities, it's harder to communicate with, and I'd rather have that. So therefore, if that's the case, with social media and everything else that we've got nowadays, there's lots of ways that we can communicate with members of the public. And finally, and probably the wrong metaphor, but I'd rather take a sniper's rifle focused approach to policing in hotspot areas and areas of significant crime and disorder than to take a shotgun approach all over the place, to get sophisticated in terms of how we share intelligence, how we analyse that intelligence, how we focus in onto the offender. Because call me old-fashioned, you know, those individuals probably serve time in prison, some of the individuals who are committing the crime. You know, that's the start of a 10, isn't it? So therefore, why aren't we actually focusing onto those individuals and, you know, apprehending them and, you know, making their lives misery, because some of them are making your lives misery or your constituents' lives misery. So we've got to do everything that we can in that sense. So we've got the conundrum of local authorities and police and key partners working genuinely, not lip service, together under one roof with the same aims and objectives in mind to be able to deliver for the people of Essex from a community safety point of view. Surely we can, well you can because you've done it with the MASH. So you should also already be very proud in terms of what you've achieved. The second question, the fencing. I am not known for prevaricating. I don't know the issue and I'd rather be open and honest with you. But one thing I can do is find out about that issue and to find out whether or not it has had an impact in terms of crime. One of the things I can say is, though, within your area, and indeed within the wider area, I've already explicitly said this, but I think it's important to say again, crime is down, burglary is down, antisocial behaviour is down, against the backdrop of HMIC inspections saying that we're actually recording crime accurately and ethically. That's really important to say. The Corringham police station, look, I don't want to close any police station, you know, but the financial situation dictates that we must look at the way that, one, we deliver the service that we're delivering, and secondly, is it effective to keep police stations open? I know it's an emotive issue. I went through this when I was a chief inspector in Stoke-on-Trent division, when there was some financial difficulties in Staffordshire, and I know how emotive these types of issues are and how important they are. And that's why I think it leads into your colleague's point around visibility and accessibility. Even though the police station is a physical representation of that visibility and accessibility, I genuinely believe there's other things that we can do collectively to still provide that service. Because the bottom line is, whether or not you agree or you don't agree, and again, this is just one sort of rationale, if you like. There's a whole myriad of rationales or reasons as to why a police station should stay open. But the footfall within Corringham, even in my day, was few in nature. Even in my day in 2008 when I was here. But the bottom line is we don't want to let your people down, and we will do everything that we can to still provide that visibility within your area, even though that police station actually is going to be closed. I always want to be open and honest with colleagues here.
That's correct.
It's going to be. Wouldn't it if it was as easy as saying crime is down, so let's reduce the budget even further? And we also know that policing is about crime reduction. It's fundamentally about crime reduction. You know, Pelian principles, 9 of them. The first one was around preventing crime in 1829, and that's never changed, I don't think. But equally, it's only 25% of our business. There's lots of other things that the police actually get involved in to support members of the community. Crime is 25% of our business. And I don't see anyone here, and again, I'll listen to your views, but I don't see anyone here who genuinely, from the bottom of their heart, I'll do it another way. Most of the communities that I've spoken to, and I've spoken to a lot of them, don't think the police should have less. They think the police should have more. What we're doing is we're managing the situation in a way that we want to work with you to be able to deliver the first-class service that we can within our budget. I'm not a politician. By very nature of the job I do, I have to be apolitical. That's what I'm about. But what I am determined to do, and I'll continue to do it as long as there's the breath in me, is to devise the best possible service for the people of Thurrock and the people of Essex. I'm sorry if that sounds corny, but it's also genuine.
Thank you. Yes, is the answer to the question. And I can show you the numbers that police funding made up 2 main sources: Home Office grant local precepts. The Home Office grant is declining year on year. For example, 2013-14, the police grant was 114 million, down to 110, down to 103. So the funding is coming in. The precept, and there's a story to be told here about the history, isn't it? Essex has a long history of extremely low precepting. All 43 forces of England are well. How much money is taken by precepts? Essex is the second lowest precepting force of 43. If we precepted to the median level, £15 million each and every year coming into our budget. So we were very proud going back about those zero increases. Actually now we are realising the reality of those decisions, aren't we? So a low level of money coming in. We're up for the challenge. We're still a large and capable organisation, but we are spending less money on policing.
And what that shows us tonight is that hate crime is on the increase here in Thurrock. It's this year alone, it's up by 28%. That's 300 incidents, and 81% of these are racially motivated. We do have a hate crime officer here in Thurrock, and I appreciate that we've got that after having it taken away at one point. But it's clearly not enough, and I'd like to know what you as the police are going to do so that our residents here in Thurrock feel safe, because it is an ever-changing community, but it's something that we shouldn't be afraid of saying that we've got a problem with it and asking you as the police to tackle.
Thank you. Well, actually, all the good work that you do. I think sometimes you don't sell yourself very well and tell people the good work that is going on in Thurrock. I'd just like to ask, how near are you to giving PCSOs more powers?
Next then, Councillor Healy.
Crime was going down. I'd like to tease out just some information on detection rates, and clearly, if crime's going down, but there's still a higher rate of crimes not being resolved, well, hey, it's a false graphic. Also, around the one of the things for victims of crime, what measures there are in place for payback or risk?
Opportunities for working together. Corring Police Station was taken as an example. Are you specifically happy to work with local authorities and other partners in the safety partnership on first using non-police buildings as basis for neighbourhood policing, so that we can have that sense of a visible, accessible presence without you carrying the burden of the building, and secondly on having appropriately trained non-police staff doing some of the basic information gathering and reporting tasks, so that people feel they have got a face they can go to for some of the real basic low-level stuff.
You're doing quite a lot of work to reduce crime in the area. And I also appreciate the fact that some of your colleagues came to Chafford very recently to discuss issues there. I'm therefore pleased about the fairness program you've introduced, which goes to schools to talk to youth and young people about crime and social disorder, because that's part of the issues that were addressed at the meeting. What I'll also look forward to you doing is to address the other aspects in the Chafford 100 West Thurrock area. It's the issue of boy racers speeding around that area. I'm sure you've heard this mentioned many times, but it continues to be a blight on the residents, and we hope we can do something about it.
As Shadow Portfolio Holder for Public Protection on this side of the chamber, can I congratulate the Chief Constable, his executive management team and all Essex Police officers for the good work they consistently do in keeping Essex, and particularly Thurrock, a safe place in which to live and work. Thank you too for the most informative and candid presentation this evening. The performance to reduce overall crime levels in Thurrock by 4.1%, and my figure differs by 0.2% because of perhaps an over-enthusiastic district commander here who was up to make sure I got figures at that yesterday. But the performance to reduce overall crime levels in Thurrock by 4.1%, despite the cost pressures and the focus to spend taxpayers' money wisely, is indeed impressive and defies what some members predicted in this chamber just a couple of years ago. Looking to the future, can the Assistant Chief Constable please confirm that we should be confident this trend will continue? Thank you, Mr. King.
Councillor, by anybody's measure, and is, I guess, typical of public service across the place, similarly proportioned to the kind of cut I think that we're having at place. If I look at the financial challenge slide, it appears that we've lost somewhere in the region of 400 police officers, 150 plus PCSOs. I guess the question for me is, how low can you go? What is the bottom line? How few police officers can we have and still be safe?
Like a couple of other members have said, congratulations on your crime reduction figures. And they are pleasing to note. However, you look through some of through some of the local websites and in the press and that, day in, day out, people are being mugged, people are being stabbed, people are being found dead in the road, people are being burgled, people are being beaten up. We, in partnership with yourselves, have got a bit of an unenviable task really, especially your officers. We've got an election coming up in the next couple of months. And one of the main topics, of course, when you're knocking on doors, is about law and order and that. So it would be nice to get your view on how you would like to try and defend your service. Because what you've told us here this evening, yeah, I quite agree with that. But for the actual lay person on the street, it's not what they see. And finally, Mr. Mayor, Corrington Police Station, well, Stanford West, we had a police station just across the railway, not too many years ago, about 7 years ago, that closed. Corrington Police Station, I think for our community, and one that's really, really needed for our area. I don't want to see that shut, I want it kept open. And I'm asking you personally, you take my message back to your people, I want it kept open. I'm not interested if any other members are going to bury their head in the sand, but it's unacceptable to me and also the community that I serve.
The Matchy is a great example where a police presence has greatly improved the assessment and outcomes for our safeguarding in Thurrock. Thanks a lot. But I've got two questions for you. With the reduction in funding, how are we in fact, going to reduce the 17% increase in domestic violence in our borough? And also I represent the residents of Chapel St Mary and Alsett Heath, and who cannot acknowledge less crime being committed when they're constantly plagued by motorbikes and quad bikes running riot on Alsett Heath, and this has been going on for years. It appears there's nothing that can be done to stop this nuisance. We've invited the PCSOs many times to our community forum and have been disappointed in their attendance. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. They often say it's not a question of half full or half empty. Is the cup twice the size it actually needed to be in the first place? But something I would like to ask you is, we hear about crime being reduced. How are we going to get the communities in Thurrock's confidence back to say that it is actually worth reporting crime? Because there's been said, the press is saying, crime, the crime detection and the solving of crime is not actually where we'd like it to be. And, if you talk to a lot of people, they say, well, it's not worth bothering. One, we never get an answer, or no one's going to come out to us. How can we actually get the community's confidence back to do that? And, if you take Trafford as an example, where I know that there was a recent public meeting there, and, people on Trafford have been reporting crime, and if you look at the stats, you think it was possibly like a no-go area. I live there, it really isn't that bad. Boy races are a problem, but other areas I know really do suffer with crime. And something that hasn't been brought up, what are we going to do to actually manage the congestion around the roads when the bridge is closed and Lakeside is going out, and actually people cannot get to and from work, to and from home, and trying to get the emergency services around? You never see any traffic police actually there directing any of the traffic.
Straight talking. It's nice to hear for a change, not flamming about as it is. That's what we need to hear. Mobile police station, I'd like to see a bit more consistent in more rural areas. I'm going to say it turns up now and then it doesn't turn up for a couple of months. It needs to be more regular to give people a chance to actually go there and at a time that suits people. I think most people go to work and like to see it between 5 and 7 o'clock in certain areas. We've heard about off-road motorbikes, a major problem in the area. Working with landowners in the last few months, we've managed to get it to one sort of area now. So with your sniper rifle, perhaps you use the last bullet, get the last final area that we need to sort out. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
But basically, what the residents need to know is what's happening on the ground. I go to Nat meetings and we continually get problems coming up, the police don't turn up, they ignore the situation. And may I say, Mr. Mayor, it doesn't really help with the election of the new crime commissioner last year, with the police announcing in the press that they were spending over £350,000 on a survey asking people what do they think the causes of crime are. May I suggest to them that if they've been in the job long enough and they don't know what the causes of crime are, then it's about time we got someone else in. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So, Chief Constable, as a former chairman and member of the police authority, can you tell us how you're going to provide effective neighbourhood policing with the cuts that the government put on you?
Without coming up for air, I can see here. So if I missed something, then please bear with me. The one that all of them have pushed me buttons. But the first one, Councillor Worrell, yeah, and also colleague here. Excuse me for not knowing all of your names. But that one pushes the buttons. Hate crime is up. It's more than just race, as we know. Disability, a whole range of things. That is one area that seriously I joined the job to try to get under control and to be able to deal with. And it's one area that I think we are actually getting our act together with, because we are actually getting people from within diverse communities who are feeling more confident to report these matters. And the officers that we've got, and there's 9 of them throughout the county who are specialists in that field, comb on a daily basis our incident records. They come through and comb them with a vice-like grip for anything at all that reflects anything at all that could be hate crime. They will then flag it up. They will then make sure and keep prodding and poking people until the officers actually are out there dealing with and investigating hate crime. So we've seen an increase, in my opinion, in terms of reporting. But you know, because you've been in this field, and you know because you've been in this field also, that it's underreported. And that's one that I am going to shout from the rooftops. Please take it back. If anybody is subject to a hate crime, please report it. We will do our best to investigate it. We have dedicated extra resources at a time of austerity to be able to investigate, identify, investigate, and deal with this. But it's not just about the police, please believe me. And this is not me trying to abrogate any responsibility. We do need specialists, we do need partners involved also in terms of being able to deal with it. One thing I can say from our analysis is we're not seeing an explosion in the BNP, or we're not seeing an explosion in extremism, we're not seeing an explosion in that type of thing. We're seeing an explosion, and it's something that I'm quite pleased with, and people feel confident to report it. And I'm not getting fed back to me, and I would, because I actually go along to the strategic IAG, Independent Advisory Group. I attend that. We're in the process of revamping that to make it more effective. You know, I'm not getting fed back to me that people endemically feel let down by Essex Police in terms of the service that we've provided. So that's one area. It's a bit like serious sexual crime. We've seen a significant increase in serious sexual crime. Again, I think that's a positive, because often females are feeling comfortable about actually reporting those horrible, nasty offences. So I'll stand before you here now and actually say to you that I think that is a good thing, that people are feeling confident to report those types of offences. I'm not doing very well with the time management here, but I'll give it a go. Thurrock, in terms of PCSO's more powers, and forget who was it that asked that one. This is a conundrum. My own personal opinion is that we should be giving PCSOs more powers. There are powers that are on offer that we haven't actually used within Essex. However, I don't think that we should be giving them the same powers as police officers, because the moment we do that, those PCSOs will get sucked up into the demand and rigours of policing in the country around detections, and we are sitting mid-table in terms of offenders brought to justice. Okay? Last year, again, in the interest of openness, we weren't in the position where I would have wanted it to be. Okay, so we were starting from a low position in terms of the 6th position, but mid-table, for a force, the 13th largest force in the country, including metropolitan forces, is not a bad place to be. Room for improvement. Detections for burglary dwellings, detections for robbery, detections across the piece in every area apart from burglary of people's sheds and garages is on the increase in comparison to last year. We've got over 2,000 more proactive arrests of individuals this year than last year. Over 2,000 more proactive arrests. It's not a bad day's work or day at the office. The working together and police buildings, I thought that was a particularly good question, because please believe me, I'm not in this game to kind of have one up on this person, I can have one up on that agency. All I want to do is for us to get our act together, excuse the phrase, to be able to work together to deliver a service for the people out there. I'm not in it for any practices around, and that'll give me the opportunity of making a quick buck in terms of selling the premises. You know, if it's very much about organisations genuinely getting something about it, not in a gimmickry way, but in a way that genuinely makes a difference, then I'll be at the front of the queue. And the issue that you raised around buildings and sharing resources, I personally think there's a lot in that. I personally think that will not be gimmickry, that will genuinely make a difference. And in fact, the proof of the pudding's in the eating, because the MASH is actually doing that now. The MASH is actually doing that. And I've got case after case, I've got cases coming out of me ears of cases that would have failed if it wouldn't have been for the MASH and the work that you're actually doing within that. And you know as well as I do, in the domestic abuse setting, horrible, pernicious offence that it is with bullies preying on individuals. We've got to get our act together. We owe it to your citizens to be able to do that. And again, I know that sounds, restorative justice has been about for years, but actually, in the right setting and involving the community in actually undertaking this with the police, it can have significant benefits in terms of reducing youth crime. So there are two areas that I'd like to see. There's no suggestion that we are going to reduce the numbers of the schools officers, but there is a suggestion. Can you help me out, Simon? What was it again? Thank you very much for your kind comments about it, but I can't read the writing. Was it a confidence issue?
Looking to the future, can the Assistant Chief Constable please confirm that we should be confident this trend will continue?
Right. Now that is the, used to be the $1 million question, it's probably the $1 billion question in terms of that. What I can pledge is that the initiatives that we have got up and going at the moment that are quite frankly growing legs, so Operation Insight, your people will have been involved in Operation Insight. Michelle Cunningham from your community safety team certainly has, in terms of actually getting into those areas and predicting where crime is likely to happen. Not in a Mystic Meg way, but in a way that really does actually identify, using algorithms, where crime is likely to happen, and policing big, not just policing big resources and assets into those particular areas. Getting on the toes of the criminals, because often they live in those areas, not surprising to anyone, and making sure that we do everything to reduce their offending behaviour, has worked very well for us. Those types of initiatives that we can actually go and borrow with pride. I don't mind going anywhere in the country, provided it's a good initiative, it's not gimmickry based, and it's actually going to make a difference. And the work that Andy's doing around trying to make the local policing, in my opinion, more effective than it is now, even with less. I like the way that it's going. I can see it going, and actually, I'm confident that it's going to be challenging, but I'm confident that my officers, every man, woman and person in Essex Police, will do their best to be able to deliver for the people of Essex. I'm sorry if that sounds like rhetoric, but I mean it. You know, we'll do our best for you. Moving on, if I can, to the £17 million cuts. This was a technical question that I'm going to bring in to Chief Superintendent Profit with. Can I bring you with that?
Point of accuracy, I suppose, for the record, this is a budget deficit made up of cuts and growth pressures. That's the first point of accuracy. And then you asked, how low can we go? And I think that's a good question. The Chief has set an ambition for, can we keep our officer numbers at or above 3,000? We're just over 3,200 now. But I think, and the Chief has said this, to become absolutely fixated on a simple number would not be the right approach, because sometimes when you look at the mix of your workforce, it's better off to have 3 police staff members carrying out functions and a couple of police officers. Because quite simply, there's an economic sense to doing that. So we're taking frontline policing numbers are right at the forefront of our mind. Maximise that coverage. PCSOs. How low can we go? We've made some assumptions. We wouldn't want to go any lower than 250, which is only 20 or 30 less than we've got now at worst, plus any partner-funded posts. But we've got to genuinely have a look at what's the right mix of that workforce.
Thank you. And then we moved on to Mr. Terry, who he and I worked together when he was the leader of the council. I was divisional commander here. Terry mentions around muggings, people getting stabbed, etc. Horrendous. Serious violent crime in this area is on the increase. The numbers are few, by the way. They're not large numbers. Now, I hope you would understand my point that you haven't got a large nighttime economy. You haven't got a large nighttime economy here. But what you have got is domestic abuse that's on the increase. And it was your point, Councillor, around what we're going to come on to that in terms of what we're going to do, because that's another one of the reasons why I joined the job, frankly. But domestic abuse is on the increase, and some of the increase in the serious violence is associated with domestic abuse. And there are lots that we are doing to try to, a whole range of things, and it's not a talking shop. It's backed up with loads of really meaningful action, to ranging from targeting the offender and an Achilles heel approach. You know, Al Capone style, you can't get that will get you for tax evasion. We're doing it with those perpetrators who are actually, you know, making they make a career out of making people's lives a misery. So we've got to do everything that we can to get those individuals under control. Terry, I know you know this, but you know this is not. This is a decent area. This is not like twinned with Toxteth. This is a decent area, Thurrock. Serious crime is up, but serious crime, the numbers are few, and it's linked to domestic abuse. And indeed, that links me in lovely to your question around domestic abuse and what we're doing about it. Well, we have got the multi-agency safeguarding hub, and you lead this, and this is what I would like to see happen. I would like to see my resources from a police point of view, and it's not as easy as this, there's always crossover, isn't it? Because domestic abuse, those of you that have done the reading, etc., is a very complex environment, very complex and very challenging environment to deal with. But nevertheless, it's one that's got to be dealt with. Well, what we are doing in terms of domestic abuse is that we are creating our own domestic abuse teams. We have got a pilot that's running in Southend at the moment, and I was down there only the other week, of individuals who actually are a mixture of experienced detectives and experienced officers who will own that investigation, will own the safeguarding of the investigation. And I think that's right and proper that we do that. But equally, if I had my way, in the future I would be having, and I don't mean this in a pejorative way actually, because there's some fantastic people in the partnership, dedicated individuals who will do anything to get this agenda under control. But I would like to see the safeguarding, not the immediacy, but the aftermath being performed by partners like health, like the probation service, like the voluntary sector, Safer Places. Those of you that don't know, Jan Dalrymple, the chief executive, that fantastic, dedicated and committed individual in terms of this agenda. And our approach ranged from focusing onto the offender to providing safeguarding for the victim, and I'd like to see partners moving into that space in the future, because I think it's important to do that, and continue having the message inculcated to people out there that Essex Police will take this matter serious. And you know the history that we've had. You know the history, much to my consternation. The history was, I was the Gold Commander when Christine and Shania Chambers were tragically murdered on the 6th of the 6th, 2011, when I was just getting out of the shower. It's 2 minutes past 6 in the morning when I got the call. My daughter at the time, by the way, was 2. Shania was just over 2. So I know the effects that this can have on people's lives. So again, we've got that and we're doing our best. Does that answer your question in terms of what we're doing? Thank you. Now we've got Councillor, was it Morris Cook? Yeah. Yes, brilliant. This is an area, you've hit the nail on the head. Because I leant over to Andy and I said, because sometimes you have to look at yourself in the mirror and actually accept that we need to do things differently and better. Confidence in communicating and making sure, Terry, I think you touched on it as well, making sure that our communities aware of the things that we're doing, and not only that, our confidence in what we're doing is crucially important. I think we can be better in terms of how we communicate with people. Because I saw initially, when I raised those statistics around the crime figures, because see one or two people's eyebrows raised, but equally I see a lot more people thinking, I didn't know that. Well, that's our job. I went to the strategic IAG, and it was actually your local IAG chair, Neil, who said to me, you guys shoot yourselves in the foot. I said, what do you mean, Neil? He said, you don't tell us things. You need to tell us more about it. And that's why, again, with Andy and the team, our communication strategy, our marketing strategy, the work that we're doing in terms of getting the message out, I think needs to be writ large within that. But part of that is using you as the conduit, and part of that is us actually being here today. And the work that the PCC does actually in terms of his meetings, which our district commanders attend and give an update, I think it also takes that a stage forward. But there is this almost disparity between outputs and confidence, and it's how you bridge that. And I think the inculcate's the right word. We need to inculcate the message. We need to constantly keep going over and over and informing people. And we don't get it right all the time, but we aspire to get it right all the time, and we will do our best to be able to take that agenda forward if we can. Now, somebody